Welcome back to the Afternoon Constitutional. We appreciate you being here and tuning in while YouTube lets us. And that is the subject of today's program as breaking news out of the world of, well, this. And of course, this Darcy guy doesn't understand media, obviously. Having been terminated by employers before, I can tell you um, that's how it goes. And you will be asked to come into the boss's office on a Friday after your last show, and they'll say, you know, it's been a nice run, or something along those lines. Or they'll have an attorney meet you at your office, maybe with a sheriff's deputy to help you clean things out. It doesn't make it, any better for you. But Fox News is facing a lot of blowback for this, and we're going to tie this today together with the story, and you can join in as well. You can see the phone number there, 434-964-1075, because a lot of folks not happy with Fox already before this happened, and including, but not limited to, the settlement that they came to with Dominion voting. And we went into this in some degree on my radio show after the Dominion settlement, the things that the Dominion settlement didn't do, which was give Dominion a chance to say all the allegations that Fox and Rudy Giuliani really made were untrue. It spared Dominion the necessity to actually have to go into a court of law and swear that the things that were being said about their voting machines were untrue, because they had successfully gone through a court of public opinion program that had so thoroughly tainted what the story was, which was the story was Rudy Giuliani and a couple of President Trump's other lawyers had made some connections with Dominion voting machines through software that they owned, and were making the case that they had been influenced outside of the country by developing software. Also, something that Dominion didn't have to go on the record and defend, which was whether or not they had lied or not to the American people when they said that these voting machines didn't go on the internet. We've seen here in Virginia that they did, but that's all water under the bridge. The media is connecting the two, though Tucker Carlson was nowhere in these reports. And having been through on smaller levels these incidents before, I know that this is far more likely connected to ESG and DEI than it is with Dominion voting machines, or DVM. This has more to do with Fox News trying to score more points in the world of DEI and ESG, and to appease an advertiser block that, quite honestly, is advertising simply for political reasons. These are advertisers. Now you see them on CNN, just like we saw the video, and NBC, that just want to be seen on the right kind of program. They don't want to go out and find the most customers, because their customers, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and we'll have some clips for you coming up later on in the program regarding whether or not somebody's clients are actually their customers or someone else. And for many years, the question has been, if somebody's clients aren't the customers who buy their products from them, well, then who are their clients? And in many cases, we've come to discover that it used to be Wall Street. Wall Street investors were often connected to where these perversions of the normal commerce theory happened. Well, now there's a new street in the game, and it's K Street. It's K Street, the lobbying firms, the PR firms that are hoping to get good PR through the milieu of the internet, where such suits like the one against Fox can't be brought because a Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or YouTube for that matter are protected from that sort of liability. This is why one of last week's episodes of this program went poof, because we had a doctor on who discussed treating sick people with readily available medicines to make them well again. And that was against YouTube's privacy or content policies. And they told me so. And they said, that's your warning. We start counting strikes after this. So I have three strikes remaining. This is why we're working on a Rumble channel for this program, for the eventuality that YouTube says, nah, this is not what we had in mind. Now, for those who are saying, well, Joe, this is the afternoon constitutional. Isn't this unconstitutional? No, it's not unconstitutional. No more than I agree with Elon Musk when he claims that Twitter is the public square. It's not. The public square is the public square, and we shouldn't confuse a private company for that. That's usually the first sign a company has gotten out over its skis a little bit too far and to their own peril be it. But when we see companies like Bed Bath and Begone start to behave in a political way where their business decisions are more about telling you what you should be doing, well, then they've gone too far. And that's been the problem with all of this, is that they have decided amongst themselves to make decisions that aren't in their best interest. Tucker Carlson had one of the highest rated shows. So it's not about the ratings of the program. Usually, it has been my experience that these things are generally amongst the most mundane reasons you could possibly come up with. And I would love to tell you that it's other than that. I would love to tell you that somehow that there's some dastardly fellow with a stovepipe hat and a curly mustache going, I'm going to get at you. And George Soros certainly plays that role, minus the stovepipe hat and the mustachios. But that being said, you still have to square it up with someone. Somebody is profiting from Tucker Carlson's ouster at Fox News. And odds are that is Fox News in some way, shape, or form. They have connected this to a profitable outcome. And, well, how could they do that, Joe? You say, how is that even possible? Well, it is because they are looking at K Street and or Wall Street, probably K Street first, then Wall Street. They want to be right with the ESG crowd. They want to be right with the ESG crowd so that they can start seeing some of that investment money that they're getting, the pharmaceutical companies, hot and cold running monies on MSNBC. And let's not kid ourselves. There were several points in Tucker Carlson's life that people like you have probably said, that's a weird thing for him to say, or that was a weird guess for him to have. And so even the January 6th videos, which he was showing at the behest of Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, most people after seeing them went, that's it? That's your expose? These were the secret videos. Kevin McCarthy gave you all the videos from January 6th, and these were the ones you picked? And Yeah, it was. And so many of you were questioning that. Many of you questioned, how conservative he was in certain ways, especially when it came to public policy on several issues. But moreover, shortly after his daughter was harassed here in Charlottesville, he was at a community called Farmington. He was having dinner, and one of the residents laid into his daughter at a bathroom. And after that, a lot of people feel like Tucker Carlson kind of backed off the public process, and maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But at the end of the day, there was some people who were very clearly concerned that he had eased up. But then he would come back, and people would say, "Oh, okay, well he's back again. Now he's doing his usual thing," and then he's gone. And there's an axiom I've learned. I've been doing this longer than Tucker has. Certainly not at the level he was, but there is a truism that you have to have. You have to fly your own plane, and maybe Tucker realizes this now. Is that if he did anything in an effort to keep his position with Fox, it didn't work. And it never works. It never works because as soon as the broadcast entity says to you, hey, we would like you to do less of, insert whatever it is they want you to do less of, and you start trying to comply with that, you're going to wind up out of a job anyway. You think you're defending your job, you think you're protecting your position in the world, but you're really not, because they're going to eventually let you go anyway. That's been my life lesson. So if you're going to fly the airplane into the mountain, at least let it be your airplane. It's been a hallmark of what we've done. It's why we do this here, is so that we can have a conversation with you, lay out some of the news stories, and talk to some of the folks who know a thing or two. Now, since ESG is a big part of what went into this, as it is my analysis, this was Fox News getting rid of a highly well-viewed show, which in normal commerce, and for those who say, oh, this is capitalism, Joe, no, it's not. See, capitalism says you have a popular program, you charge more money for your advertisers to get on that show because there are more viewers or more listeners. That's just the common sense of capitalism, because you want to do the best for your customer. However, when the customer is no longer the customer, and it is now some strange person from K Street and or Wall Street, or a combination of both, you wind up where we are with this particular story, where your most popular guy is out because he is causing trouble amongst the ESG investors. And maybe some of them said, I'm not going to spend some money this year. We're just finishing up the first quarter. This is always a tough time for broadcasters anyway, because you're Super Bowl hangover and those kind of things. But I don't want to bore you with the inner workings of broadcasting. But the first quarter is always that tough period anyway. And Fox News probably had a few people saying, I would, but Tucker says some stuff, and I don't know, maybe I'm not. It was funny when we were younger, whatever the excuse is. But the excuse is, don't call us, we'll call you. Now, Phil Kerpen is on the phone with us from American Commitment to talk a little bit about ESG with us on this edition of the Afternoon Constitutional. Phil, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad. I just compared myself to a cow, but that's okay. And in the world of
I heard that.
the kudzu, and that is how I feel sometimes, is every day somebody's writing another regulation that just is another another band just climbing up the trees, and you see the planet Earth history is full of countries that were choked in under what may have even been at the beginning's best intended regulations and legislations. I'm sure Caesar didn't imagine the demise of the Roman Empire when he took dictatorial control over it, did he?
I don't think so.
No.
No.
So we can say evil or not, but I think some of the regulations we see are doing us in. And Phil has a wonderful column. If you go to AmericanCommitment.org on the ESG regulations that President Biden vetoed, a plan that would have reined in the Securities and Exchange Commission's mandates on it, Phil. And in it, one of the most tone deaf indicators of this government is Lisa Gomez, labor official, saying that the ESG rules are actually good for investors. Is this a group of people that just truly believe that if they say it enough times, whatever it is becomes real?
Well, they convince themselves, I think, and it's actually Department of Labor regulation, not an SEC regulation, but it's been a kind of an interesting saga, and it's a little bit hard to even follow without tying yourself in linguistic knots, because the veto actually was a veto. Let me see if I can get this right. It was a veto of a bill that overturned a regulation that reversed the previous regulation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nobody can follow any of that. But basically, the bottom line is the left redefined the word fiduciary into meaninglessness with this ESG movement. They basically said, the person who manages a retirement account has a fiduciary duty to the investor, to the the worker, retiree. But fiduciary always used to mean financial interest, acting in your financial interest. And the left said, well, we can consider non-financial factors as part of the fiduciary obligation. Non-pecuniary factors is actually the term they use, which means, I'm going to invest your money knowingly getting you a lower return, but it's worth it because I'm going to solve climate change or advance LGBT or social justice, and that's good for you as an investor. That actually helps you and helps your interest more than if I were getting you more income in retirement. And so I'm acting as a fiduciary by enhancing your non-pecuniary interest. This is what the ESG movement did. Just out of the blue. I mean, that was not a regulatory action. That was just basically the activists on Wall Street said, we're going to change the meaning of the word fiduciary. Now it means something that, I think it actually makes the word meaningless, right? Because if you don't have to act in someone's financial interest, you could do whatever you want and say it's for, it helps them somehow. And Trump's Labor Department prohibited this. They said, no. Fiduciary means what everyone always thought it meant. It means you have to act in the financial interest of investors. And Biden came in, his Labor Department reversed the Trump rule. They said anything goes. Non-pecuniary factors, no problem. And so Congress actually repealed that Biden rule by legislation, by a joint resolution, technically, that permanently reversed the Biden rule, put the Trump rule back in, said no, fiduciary means fiduciary like it always used to, acting in your financial, and then Biden vetoed it. So the bottom line is he used his veto pen to say that the people who manage retirement funds can consider, quote unquote, non-pecuniary factors as part of their fiduciary obligation. And so they no longer have to act in the financial interests of their investors. They can pursue, whatever political objectives they might think are in your interest, however understood.
Well, is it also important to note, I mean, this made it all the way to the president's desk, which means it had to get through the Democrat-led Senate as well. And so that there was, the president is not just flying in the face of common sense, but he's also flying in the face of some members of his own political party.
Right. There were two Senate Democrats that voted for this, John Tester and Joe Manchin, and the procedure that they used was privileged, so they only needed 50, not 60, to get this passed, which is why they were able to do it with just two Democrats and all the Republicans. But it really, I think, shows how ridiculous the president's claim is when he says these are MAGA extremists that want fiduciary to mean fiduciary, and it's like, well, man, this is. pretty mainstream concept. It's basically all of history until a few years ago. That's what it always meant. And of course, a couple of Democrats voting for it, I think, indicates that it's not MAGA extremists. But it is, I think, a pretty interesting commentary on where the Democratic Party is today, that there were only two Democrats that voted for it. So, for instance, both of your U.S. senators voted against this. They think fiduciary should mean anything goes. That's pretty outrageous, I think.
Well, and considering one of them claims still to be a former businessman, you'd think, I don't know.
Yeah, they both call themselves moderate.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't.
Well, they've redefined fiduciary, Phil, so why not redefine moderate as well? Phil,
well, the left loves to redefine words. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yep. George Orwell gets a commission every time they do. Phil, so this seems to me to be a regulatory capture in a way that they couldn't possibly legislate this kind of redistribution of wealth, this access and punitive approaches towards wealthy people or even middle class people. This is done where nobody could see it happening. Nobody knew about it happening. You just presumed because your financial planner had a fiduciary requirement to your best interests that that's what they were doing. And as you said, this goes back to pre-Trump era guidance.
Yeah, I mean whoever thought that whoever thought that the word fiduciary, meaning financial interests, was something that was up for grabs. That was always just what it meant. And so I think it shows the extent to which the left will use creative means to advance their agenda. And in this particular case, this sort of capture of Wall Street and of capital markets allows the left to advance their agenda in a lot of ways that they could never get through any legislative process. Because, look, we know they've got a war on fossil fuels. We know they've pushed all kinds of regulations and legislation towards that objective. But the single most effective thing that they've done to make it harder to produce oil and gas and make oil and gas more expensive has been what they've accomplished through the capital market.
That was Phil Kerpen, pardon me, doing my best Charlie Chaplin. You should have little things on the screen saying, stop. So Phil Kerpen from American Commitment, talking about what goes on and why this perversion of the marketplace is what's driving Fox to make what, for all intents and purposes, is a bad business move. Because a media company, whether it's the Afternoon Constitutional or Fox News, their job is to attract as many listeners or viewers as possible so that their advertisers can be heard by as many potential customers, therefore turning that into commerce, whether it be buying books or coffee in a mug or whatever it may be. You want to do the things that will attract the most viewers and or listeners. So when Fox News makes a decision that is entirely unconnected to those, you cannot shake the idea that the ESG and DEI police were calling their advertisers and or had already called. And you heard how the fiduciaries are already feeling this pressure to put your companies in the places where they most likely will see the best benefit from ESG. They will have a higher score. Doesn't make them more money. And this is the perversion of this. And this is where Bed Bath & Begone comes into our story. Because Bed Bath & Begone decided to take a political stand. They didn't like Mike Lindell. They didn't like MyPillow. So they decided it was time for him to go. We're no longer carrying Mike Lindell's MyPillows because it's not what we stand for. And in the world of that kind of political activism, I mean, that pales in comparison to when long before the trans movement got underway. Target announced to everyone that they were no longer going to have gender-specific bathrooms. I still know people who won't go into Target, even if there's an amazing sale of exactly what they're looking for. They won't go into Target because of that. And that was years ago. So this isn't new, but what you see with Bed Bath and Beyond in their announcement that they're filing for bankruptcy, and from the way it sounded, these stores are going to be closed within a week or two. It will be like the fluff coming out of a pillow. It is what happens when you take that kind of stand that says, we're going to tell you, the customer, what we want you to buy. And it's good to see the customer. I'm not a fan of boycotts, and I would never have said to anyone, don't go to Bed Bath & Beyond. Like Target, I know an awful lot of people who stopped going there. And were fairly regular. I mean, I know one young lady who would get coupons in the mail constantly from Bed Bath & Beyond. And she always, $20, 20%, 25%, sewing machines, and you name it. And just as soon as the Lindell thing went down with My Pillows, that's it, I'm done. So it does happen, and people vote with their feet. There's an organization, it's called Second Vote, and their premise is your first vote is at the ballot box, your second vote is with the companies that support, you name it. But, you see the ballot harvesting and all of this going on. Understand that money has to come from somewhere. So hopefully that laid some of the Tucker Carlson, what just went on, into some perspective. That he was let go, like so many people in broadcasting get let go at the end of his program on a Friday afternoon. Probably had to sign an NDA. Haven't we heard about NDAs in the news? I distinctly remember there being some big whoop-de-doo over NDAs and how they're just a violation of free speech. And I'm sure he'll live up to it, and he will resurface somewhere. I know that he had become a fan of kind of what we're doing here, is that self-created organization. I will warn him that it costs a lot of money. A lot of the things he grew used to having on Fox, he's going to have to pay for himself, or somebody is going to have to pay for him. But you know that however long this NDA goes on for, somewhere there's a Newsmax or Epic Times that is already offering him this. And understand one other thing. It was just announced that at the end of last week, not to get you into the industry too much, but a lot of you are talking about it. Dan Bongino may be stepping out from behind his microphone at Cumulus Media, where he had taken the noon to 3 slot as the implicit replacement for Rush Limbaugh. After the story leaked out, I guess it was about 3 or 4 months after all these new shows started showing up, Clay and Travis and Dan Bongino, all these shows started showing up. Tucker Carlson himself was on the Charlie Kirk show, also available between noon and 3 weekdays on the radio, and told Charlie that Premiere had offered him that slot. Said, hey, why don't you do noon to 3? Why don't you be the person? You're the only person with this gravitas to sit behind the golden EIB microphones of Rush Limbaugh. And I believe his answer to Premier Radio Networks was, what are you, crazy? But don't be surprised if you don't see something like that happen. Perhaps a radio boogie with the two-step that Charlie Kirk does with his radio/television program. But that's musings for another time. Until tomorrow at 3, I hope this answered some of your questions about the whole scenario with Tucker Carlson, and so that you can at least feel a little bit more at ease that yes, it had to do with bad business. Yes, it had to do with ESG and all the things that are wrong with the economics of a world that's driven by these kind of things. And if you want to be mad at Fox News for it, be mad at Fox News for being just like everyone else.